They say we're loud, opinionated, afraid, telling us to hush, dim our historical light. But darlings, we're the heartbeat, sharp and keen, unveiling the truth behind the silver screen.
History harpies hear us roar. Through the ages we explore.
Hi, and welcome to History Harpies.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Christine.
And we welcome you for a very Friendsgiving episode.
Oh, Friendsgiving. You are correct. Yes.
I do wonder whether we're going to have time before Thanksgiving to do another episode, but this could be considered a pre-Thanksgiving episode where we give thanks for the gift that is, drumroll, sexual harassment.
Yes, this is going to be the topic of what is our 14th episode. We are going to be talking about some films that deal with teachers and students and harassment on all sides, or harassment on different sides, maybe we should say. Bad behavior, some good behaviors.
And a lot of rumors.
And certainly we also have going a lot of power differentials. I guess we could probably do a whole elaborate thing where we spun this out, Lauren, to turn power differentials into a conversation about Thanksgiving and like the American founding or something. But let's not do that.
Let's not do that.
But I am going to say before we start that I think we've appropriately bridged Halloween and Thanksgiving because I just brought you a present of your favorite candy, which came from my son's Halloween bag.
But here's what you don't know.
And you said that.
Here's what you don't know, because I didn't want to spoil the gift at the time. Right before you came, I went to CVS and a pack of Twizzlers.
Oh my goodness.
But
it's a thought that counts.
Yours was so special.
The thought that counts.
Yes, and I am looking forward to perhaps turkey-flavored Twizzlers in honor of Thanksgiving.
I'm going to vomit now.
And pretty soon we'll be heading to our Thanksgiving traditions where we can spend time with family and whatever that means. For
all families, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So, in some way, this is also a nice segue from Thanksgiving to hunting, because the first thing we're going, isn't that fantastic? I didn't even practice that one.
Oh, girl, you are on
zipping
around.
You're zipping around. So the first thing we want to talk about is a very recent film that came out, and then we're going to talk about a couple of older ones that pertain to our theme. So the first film we want to talk about is called After the Hunt, and came out fairly recently in 2025, and a film that in some ways got a lot of buzz initially, but the buzz faded pretty quickly.
It's interesting because I told somebody what we were talking about this week, the three films. And of course, I didn't think they would have heard of the older films, but they said, well, I haven't heard of any of those films. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, this is this Julia Roberts vehicle. And so the idea is, as two professors, we felt that we had to go and see this film about academia. And
at Yale specifically, in this particular film.
And Julia Roberts playing a professor, and to investigate how well it captures academia and some of its flaws and the film in general. So the idea is that Julia Roberts is a philosophy professor at Yale who philosophy.
Yes, philosophy.
For reasons that we're unsure still doesn't have any tenure.
Still does not have tenure.
Though she is Julia Roberts.
And so is in her mid-50s at least.
Yes. And in the film although there are some medical reasons, or maybe she took a few leaves, or I don't know, extensions.
It's unclear.
It is unclear why she is not a full professor, but she is not a full professor. And listeners, let me just say one thing, because I'm going to clarify it for you. Okay?
Please.
All right. And I'm not telling you, Christine, anything.
No, I understand. I understand.
Tenure is not this nebulous thing that one person in the world gets. There are very explicit rules in every department, procedures about how you get tenure, what you need to publish, and what you submit and when. And most people get it.
Yes.
Okay?
Criteria, calendars, and most people are successful.
It is like a promotion at work.
It is a promotion at work.
So the idea that in this department, either Julia Roberts or the Andrew Garfield character, who's a much younger assistant professor named Hank, are vying for tenure, and only one of them can be the chosen, is ridiculous.
So we have this ridiculous scenario in which these two are presented as being very close friends, close colleagues. They are both in the same department. But yes, as you say, Lauren, the film presents to us that they are competing for tenure, which, as we know, is ludicrous. and I have to say, if Lauren and I had to compete for tenure, the entire department would collapse. It really would. I mean, just nobody would ever want only one of us. I think we have to make that very, very clear. So we have then this point of tension in the film.
And actually, didn't we go up for tenure?
We did.
Okay, we both went up at the same time, and we both got it.
So
our own experience refutes this film.
Yes, as does every experience, certainly. Although I do like the idea of these kind of cage match competitions over tenure. If we had that in our department, I would not complain, actually, because that might mean that...
Okay.
Anyway. So this is a point of controversy and conflict in the relationship of these two people, again, played by Julia Roberts and Andrew Garfield. But what is more of a controversy, although it does relate to the tenure question, is that there is a graduate student. I just want to call her Sydney because she plays Sydney
on the Bear.
Ayo Adebiri. And in this film, she's called Maggie. She is the child of billionaires. And we are told pretty explicitly that she is not a talented graduate student. And I know, Lauren,
let me add,
that this is a shock.
Because, but here's the other thing. So she is a Black woman. Yes. She's a queer woman. She is open about her non-normative gender identity.
Yes, is in a relationship with a non-binary person.
Right. So she is someone who is very openly expressing her identity, and also at the same time talking about, I guess, separating herself from the legacy of her parents, or at least other people perceive it that way. She doesn't have to live in like a crappy New Haven hole. She could live anywhere.
Yes.
And she lives in the crappy New Haven hole.
Yes, and the unkind way to describe it is that she is cosplaying a poverty that she does not experience. And this is something that the Julia Roberts character, in effect, accuses her of later in the film.
It's germane to the story.
It's germane to the story. And so we have then a student who is very, very close to the Julia Roberts character, sort of mimics her. There's a sense of real intimacy in the friendship with her. And certainly one of the things that is shocking about this film that really makes it seem incredibly dated and out of this era is we're shown an image of relationships between graduate students and professors that simply does not exist anymore. That is, the Julia Roberts character has all of these graduate students over to her house. It's very clear that this is a regular occurrence. They are talking about intimate relationships.
They're on sofas next to one another,
touching each other, kissing each other.
They know where
in
the
an affectionate
bathrooms
way.
are.
Exactly.
They're very familiar with the surroundings. And Julia Roberts' husband, who's a psychiatrist, I think, he's there with them too. And it feels like they're there with peers of their own age, when in fact they're not.
They're not. And this is a situation that I think is fair to say has not pertained in academia since at least the 1990s. That degree of that informality, that intimacy, that physical intimacy between graduate students and professors. It's just completely unheard of now, certainly.
Right.
And that would not to say, of course, you can still have students over to your house, but it is very bounded, right? The rules are very clear of what is acceptable and what isn't. And so we're really shown an image of something that simply does not exist anymore in academia.
And so for that reason, it's problematic because the party that opens the film leads to Andrew Garfield and Sydney, Maggie, I want to think about her, going home and going back to Andrew Garfield's place, as I remember it.
Yes, for a nightcap.
And quote, something bad happens.
Something bad happens.
Where he crosses the line. And we don't know what that is, but they're coming from a place where, in my opinion, the line was crossed already. Long ago.
Yes.
And whatever it was that happened between them caused Maggie to go to Julia Roberts and say, Hank has done this to me and I need your help, and I'm going to accuse him publicly of this violation. And the violation isn't spelled out, but she says, I don't have to say what it is.
Yes.
It made me uncomfortable. He crossed a line, and that's it.
And all of this is supposed to be enough for the Alma character, Julia Roberts' character.
Right.
That she's not supposed to need any details. She's not supposed to need any assertion of what happened explicitly. And the Maggie character is very disappointed in her response because she expects from Julia Roberts this immediate sympathy, allyship.
I'm going to believe anything you say.
Anything you say. And when it doesn't happen, then we see over the course of the film a real sort of intensification of both Maggie's anger, the complexity of her relationship with Julia Roberts, and of course we have the Andrew Garfield character who defends his innocence quite stridently.
And also brings up accusations of plagiarism.
Yes.
That, in fact, that's the reason why he invited her to his house, and that he was trying to get her to admit to plagiarism in a more informal situation or environment, and that, in fact, again, the whole issue wasn't sexual harassment, it was plagiarism. And so Julia Roberts sort of, at first doesn't really know what to believe because she's very close with Hank. But then Hank becomes more aggressive about, him being defended and why isn't Julia Roberts sticking up for him? And he eventually is fired.
So first, the tenure case is in jeopardy, and then, as you say, he is fired. And certainly, although it's not talked about explicitly in the film as much as perhaps we might expect, his career is now over.
Right.
His career is over.
Yes.
He's going to have to go work at Starbucks or whatever.
Okay. Also, let's put in the little the punctuation that Julia Roberts is vomiting and ill for reasons unknown.
We do not know. We do not
throughout.
Know. We do not know.
So we know that she's sick of some sort, but she's in the bathroom all the time. She's vomiting. She's taking pills. And at one point, she goes into the office of a colleague and writes herself a drug prescription and goes and gets it.
And this then gets her own career in jeopardy when this is found out. We never have any explanation for why, with a chronic illness, she needs to forge prescriptions. We're not shown a reluctant doctor. We're not shown anything like this. But what we also don't really understand until maybe the very end of the movie is that it's clear she has no sexual relationship with her husband, who is very affectionate. They sleep in separate bedrooms. He basically keeps saying, you don't want to have anything to do with me. And so we also have this sense of sexual tension between her and the Andrew Garfield character that is playing into this almost sort of triangle with Maggie. And so it's a film in which a lot of stuff is going on. That's a dumb thing to say, but
there's a lot of stuff.
All of this, again, the illness and the pills,
it's like and the husband. I remember one of those boggle cages, and you shake it up, and there's just all these issues in there, and that's what this is. There's probably 15 major hot button political issues, and you can find them in this movie. You can find them in this movie. Like, pick a headline, pick a category. It's there.
And so we have this classic sort of Me Too story. We have a classic sexual harassment in academia. We have the he said, she said, although again, we never know exactly sort of what it was. We have the added dynamic of the sexual tension between Andrew Garfield and Julia Roberts, but also the intimation very strong that Maggie is in love with the Julia Roberts character. But she also wants to be her over the course of the film. She starts
so we have a single
like
white female vibe.
Yes, very much so.
She starts dressing like her. She's styling her hair like her. All of it. She starts to imitate Maggie in ways that or imitate Alma, I'm sorry, in ways that are really visible. Almost in the beginning, you're like, why are these women dressing so similarly? And then you realize, that's deliberate.
Yes.
Right. Now, by the end of the film also, if you haven't forgotten, and maybe you have because it was forgettable, Andrew Garfield gets really violent.
Yes, he does.
And then you're like, maybe he did assault person, because he gets really violent with Julia Roberts. And he's very angry, and of course he's lost his job and everything he's worked for, and he's kind of crept into this second apartment that she
which
has,
is really Deus ex machina in real estate terms. So we have this reveal that they in fact were having an affair, Julia Roberts and Andrew Garfield. But then we have the other reveal that she in fact, and of course this is so important in terms of understanding the film in a kind of Me Too sense, believe all women sense, that she had falsely accused a much older male lover, a friend of her father's, when she was a young woman.
Right.
And that he had ended up committing suicide
Right.
over this. Right.
Right.
And so there's very much the sense in the film that we don't believe all women.
Right.
So we which of course cast out on, again, I want to say Sydney too, on Maggie. But then there is this moment of violence, as you say, from Andrew Garfield, where like maybe he did do something. But it's strange that the kind of he said, she said, that ends up not really being an issue in the film.
Well, also because her demise is due to these pills, due to this prescription thing.
Yeah.
Which, and then by the end of the film, she's redeemed herself. She's now a dean. She's written a book. Yep. We don't really understand how any of that happened. Total mystery. But the he said, she said doesn't end up in really the failure of anyone except maybe Andrew Garfield, of course. But we see in the very last scene, Julia Roberts is with Sydney, Maggie, and they're talking, and now Maggie has a great new job, and she's going to get married, and all that kind of stuff. And we see that Julia Roberts is a dean, and she seemingly has a bestseller out. Who knows about what?
Who knows?
But that they've made it past this moment. And that, again, that there was also the moment where Maggie has an article, written about Julia Roberts.
That she's not supportive, that she didn't believe her.
Yes. And you know, Julia Roberts, of course, flips the script on her and says, you know, again, you're this person who's just like a
person of privilege.
A person of privilege and a virtue signaling, all of it, right? So the thing about the film that for me was interesting, again, going back to that like Boggle scenario, is that it brings up some very, very interesting issues in terms of generational tensions in academia between women, of course, the issue of sexual harassment in education, things like that, which, you know, we can talk about, and different power dynamics. But the movie just never knows where it's going. And we have a lot of characters that seem either irrelevant or undeveloped. And as we said, the character that plays Julia Roberts' husband, why he comes off as gay in everything now.
Michael Stuhlbarg.
Everything he now seems gay. And in this film, of course, included.
Very much so. It's uncanny.
And the whole thing that we've talked about just by ourselves, but that made the film not work, is the casting of Julia Roberts, because
it's
the whole
destructive.
The whole idea that a woman in her late 50s would be in this situation,
professor
vying for tenure, who even has to depend on her husband for all these things. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, also because we are told, and you and I have talked about this, we're told also in the film that she's a superstar philosopher.
Right.
And so we have this bizarro dynamic whereby she's well known. Again, it's not just that she's at Yale. Obviously, Yale has lots of untenured assistant professors running around. But she's a star in the field. She has graduate students that she's supervising.
Right.
But she is an untenured assistant professor. Who, again, is on the same professional level as the much younger Andrew Garfield.
Right.
And so one of the things that we talked about when we left was it just a casting issue where it was always intended for a much younger woman, and then Julia Roberts says, "Hey, I'm interested."
And the answer is yes.
And the answer is yes. That's how it played out. But and I assume, yes, it's probably very hard to say no to Julia Roberts if she wants to be in your film. But her casting, it really was destructive. I think,
unless they rewrote the film so that she didn't have to be vying for tenure, first of all, for the film to work.
Yes.
She could have been a full professor anyway, because the vying for tenure just went nowhere, and
agreed.
It never played into the momentum of the storytelling.
But I also think it would have been much more interesting to have a woman in that role who was maybe 38 to 40.
Yes.
Right. That age, because in terms of compressing the difference, generational difference between her and Maggie. Because in some ways, it makes a lot of sense that you have Julia Roberts as a Gen X woman whose immediate instinct is to say, wait a minute, I need the information. I need to weigh what I know about all of you. I need to weigh the details. Explain it to me. What happened? And I think it would have been. And so it's very easy to fall into again, I still want to say Sydney, to fall into the Maggie saying, wait a minute, this isn't how it works. Right. You're supposed to just agree with me.
You're just supposed to agree with
me. Immediately.
Believe
you don't
all
even
women.
need details.
Right.
And certainly, I mean, anyway. So I think that it would have been much more interesting to have a woman who was maybe 10 years older, who was not quite sort of the Gen Z, but more of a millennial who could lean into that a little bit more. And especially because of the age similarity with Andrew Garfield.
Yes.
To say, okay, it makes sense. They came to this place together, right? They both started teaching at the same time. They have this affair. And
well, the other thing, though, that would have made sense is that the graduate student was older. Because graduate students are any age, as we know. Yes,
correct, as we know.
And so if the graduate student had been a little bit older, that also would have made some sense in terms of thinking about how we process this information, and even with the graduate student being closer in age to Andrew Garfield. That would have been kind of interesting. So again, just the idea that there are 10 years between Maggie, Andrew Garfield, and Julia Roberts. That we're spanning about 30 years between the three of them. And even if some of the reviews said, well, we're really not supposed to think Julia Roberts is her actual age. We're supposed to just imagine her.
Well,
I'm like, well, it's just kind of
doesn't work that way.
No, and part of the character, part of what a lot of these reviews said made her so brilliant in the film is that she's so icy, and she's had this like really long history, and she's had all these illnesses, and we're supposed to read her as old. So it isn't like, on the one hand, we imagine a very young Julia Roberts, but on the other hand, we're seeing a current age Julia Roberts.
Well, and again, Michael Stuhlbarg is what, in his 50s? And so what does it matter for that character as well? If you cast a much younger woman in that Julia Roberts role, yes, well, okay, then do you adjust in terms of the husband? And one of the things, of course, we talked about is that there's no need for the husband character at all.
No need for
him. And it would have been so much more powerful
if she were single.
Yes. If she and I think we might have even mentioned this in the pod before. If she were single, and then you have exactly that dynamic, right? The sort of quote unquote childless cat lady professor.
Yeah, totally.
And that would have been fascinating.
That would have
in terms of the sexual and romantic and professional dynamics.
Right. And the fact that she has the husband who also, she walks on water with this guy. She can do anything.
Yeah. She literally says, "I don't love you."
Right.
And he's like, "Give me more, baby."
That's okay.
That's okay.
And I had an affair with Andrew Garfield. And I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to go live in my other apartment. Yeah. That's okay.
That's okay. Whatever
you want.
And so, but I think, because one of the things we also talked about that is pertinent here before we move on to our other accusations by people is, we talked before about how the film does seem to be inspired by Oleana, something that neither one of us watched for this pod, but David Mamet's play of a professor who also is going up for tenure, who is accused of sexual harassment and then rape by an undergraduate student. And what is bizarre, I think, about After the Hunt is we have kind of a splicing of that kind of story with a very, in some ways, modern story about sexual harassment in academia and accusations in academia with, as we discussed, After the Hunt looks like a 1970s film. When we watched it, right, you and I immediately said, he's using the Woody Allen font. Right. We have the kind of Woody Allen music.
Right.
You have, as we talked about a few minutes ago, you have this domestic, intimate environment of the professors and students hanging out together, drinking together, touching each other. Laying on each other. And so that's something else that I think weakens this film so badly, is that in order to have the true power of the dynamics among these three people, you need to have today's environment up. The door needs to stay open. Never have them over with alcohol. The boundaries have to be super clear. And so I think that that's, in some ways, yes. Okay. Can you imagine a graduate student and a professor saying, "Oh, well, I'll give you a ride home. Come up for a nightcap"? Unfortunately, I should say, let me amend that. I can imagine that situation. But that is a situation that
is not normative.
It's not normative. And all of that was presented in the film as it is normative in academia. It hasn't been that way in decades.
A very long time. No, it hasn't been. And the whole portrayal of academia, and this isn't, for those listeners who are saying, well, these are two cranky academics who are sort of like, well, we just want it to be exactly the way it is. No. But it's like, do a little bit of homework. Talk to an academic.
Learn
just a little bit about tenure. And and here's why. It's not that you need to know everything, but this ridiculous myth that no one gets tenure, publish or perish. It's just not true.
And that the decision can be made overnight. That someone can say,
Right.
well, we've just decided 5 minutes ago to not give you tenure.
And that there also is nothing behind it.
Yes,
Whereas
exactly.
Julia Roberts is like, I don't know if I'm getting it. It's a big question mark. Coin toss. You're like, girl, have you written a book or not? I mean,
Let's see the outside evaluators.
Let's just see it all. Because otherwise, it makes no sense. In the same way that the familiarity, that the the intimacy between graduate students and professors, and also professors of different ranks, all kind of laying on each other, also doesn't make any sense. So no one at, quote, Yale actually talked to anyone at Yale. And if they did talk to people at Yale, and people told them that this is the way it is, then that's a problem too.
Then that's a problem. Well, and maybe this should be the last thing that we talk about. One thing you and I have talked about before is, again, European directors who keep writing films as if American adults smoke. And we had that here.
Right.
We had that here.
Right.
And
smoking in bars.
Smoking in bars, smoking in houses.
Smoking in houses.
And it really is so symbolic, and I think we see that in this film. This is a director who has no idea what American academia is like. Again, even Yale today, right? It's not that we don't know it because we don't teach at Yale.
Right. No.
Sadly. But that
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not. That's true. Let's amend that. But it's, again, so clear. It is a completely outdated vision that just absolutely craters this film as having anything to say, in my opinion.
It really does. It really does. And it's not even a film about academia that I would show my own students.
I agree.
My own students would find this film just dumbing. I mean, they would fall asleep.
Yeah. And we almost fell asleep.
Yeah, we
because,
did.
And so not a success. But still we have an accuser. We don't know the truth of things, although it is hinted to us. We have a kind of odd resolution, and we do have a life ruined.
Yes.
The Andrew Garfield character. And so let's talk about some more accusations.
Okay.
Some more ruining of lives, some more bad behavior. And let's talk about the Children's Hour.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
And an older film came out 1961.
Right.
And directed by William Wyler from a
star-studded cast.
Star-studded cast. Audrey Hepburn playing a teacher and schoolmistress, can we say?
Yep. Shirley MacLaine playing her fellow schoolmistress and fellow teacher and confidant and bestie. And
so this is from a play by Lillian Hellman,
right.
That had been very successful on Broadway.
In the 30s.
And very controversial because it deals with an accusation of lesbianism.
Yes.
But then made into a film in 1961. Again, another very successful film. A young Shirley MacLaine.
Yes.
With already an established star in Audrey Hepburn as her partner. Scene partner, I should say. And so we have, in this case, two women running a school. They were college classmates, very close friends. And it's a school for girls. And as far as we can tell, it seems to be very wealthy young girls with local families. And there is a very badly behaved young girl, Mary, who is a liar, wants lots of attention.
And Mary's grandmother is an important patron of the school, and maybe with others as well.
And maybe with others,
But
yes.
Mary's grandmother is referred to over and over again in terms of somebody who is funding this school.
Yes, and is very well connected with the other families who are sending their daughters there.
And is also related to Audrey Hepburn's, he will become her fiance, Joe.
Played by James Garner.
Right.
And I have to say, I think James Garner is a little miscast in this. I don't really see that. I don't really see the chemistry between him and Audrey Hepburn.
But maybe you're not supposed to.
That is true. And so, basically, it's a combination of Mary being a kind of bad seed, lying, bullying other girls, disliking the fact that she is punished by Karen and Martha for her bad behavior. It's a combination of just wanting revenge on the two of them and actually overhearing a conversation between Martha and her flighty actress aunt who lives with them that leads her to accuse them of being lovers to
Yes.
her grandmother, which
Yes.
absolutely craters the school. All of the
Absolutely.
parents pull their daughters out.
Absolutely.
It is devastating.
And interestingly, it isn't just that Mary tells her grandmother, but that the grandmother then infers information she hears first from the child, from information she then hears from the aunt.
Yes.
To conclude that the two women have been involved in, quote, unnatural relations.
Yes.
So just to clarify this, the little girl who's up to no good says to her grandmother, I know all these terrible things, things that are so awful, I can only whisper them to you. The grandmother can't even really believe it, but she wants to validate it for herself. And when she goes back to the school and the aunt says, those women are always together, and Shirley MacLaine seemed angry when Audrey Hepburn and her soon-to-be husband, will get married.
Jealous of Joe.
And she validates this narrative that isn't about sexuality at all, but to the grandmother, it feels that way.
Although I think that it is the case that we have the hint from the aunt that she does see this as a sexual relationship, and in the sense that or at least a romantic one, right? Not just a close friendship. And the reason why I say that is because she says you were always that way as a little girl.
Yes.
Right? You always had you were jealous of your female friends. You didn't date anyone, have never had a boyfriend. And so I think there is that undertone there with the aunt.
Well, I guess what I felt from the aunt was saying she thinks Shirley MacLaine is gay. She doesn't necessarily think that Audrey Hepburn is gay.
Yes, that they have a relationship. Okay.
That they have a relationship. But yes, I think she definitely draws the conclusion that Shirley MacLaine desires a relationship with Audrey Hepburn, and maybe not vice versa.
Yes. Well, and of course, the other thing about the grandmother, and I think this is probably the most disturbing part in some ways to me. So Mary says to her grandmother, I hear strange noises when they're in the room together late at night. But then the other thing is that when she whispers in the grandmother's ear, which we don't hear, but the intimation is very strong, that what Mary is whispering is some of the content she has gotten from the secret sex book that she's been reading secretly in her room. And so again, we don't know that, and that's probably for the best, but that it really is this extremely concrete transmission. They are having a sexual relationship, and I have overheard it. Because what, of course, the grandmother says is, well, what two people want to do on their own is fine. The grandmother keeps insisting, I care about the fact that this is in front of children. How would children know about these sex acts? Unless basically, and for some reason nobody ever says, well, maybe she read a book, which is the reality. And so this is the grandmother's defense, right? That these two women, if they want to do that, but it can't be that they're running a school for children, and all the children leave the school and the school collapses.
And Mary ends up blackmailing her girlfriend.
Yes, Veronica Cartwright, who then was in tons of things.
Who's a kleptomaniac and says, well, if you don't confirm my story about these two being lovers, then I'm going to tell everybody that you've stolen. You stole and you go to jail. You're a cops and all that. So it leads to the complete demise of the school, the complete isolation of these two women, and their social isolation as pariahs. And they're just alone together. Although Audrey Hepburn's fiance Joe is still hanging around, supportive, and says, "Look, we can all leave together. Even you, Shirley MacLaine,
come with us,
and we'll get married, and it'll be okay." And they're having this conversation, and then Audrey Hepburn says to him, "Ask the question that you want to ask," and he does, and he says, were you ever into her, or some version of that?
Were you lovers?
Right. And from then on, Audrey Hepburn says, well, it can never be.
And see, and I actually thought that was a very unfair moment, because she pushes him and he says, I don't need to know. I believe you. I don't want to know. I haven't given any thought. And approximately a dozen times, she says to him, come on, just ask it. It's okay if you just ask. And then, of course, as soon as he does ask, she turns and says, well, I'm sorry you asked that question, and so now we can never be together. And I'm breaking our engagement, and the relationship ends.
Yeah, and she also assumes for him that he will never be able to think about anything else.
Yes.
Even when they have children and have go live somewhere else and have a totally different life, that he'll always be thinking, was she lovers with Shirley MacLaine?
Even when it's very clear that they have a passionate physical relationship.
Yes.
And that is made very, very clear to us.
And she wants children right away.
She wants children right away. They're going out in the car, presumably necking or whatever, right? We see these kind of passionate kisses between them.
Sure.
And of course, the other thing we should probably bring up is that the two women, they sue the grandmother for libel. Sorry, for slander.
Yes.
And they lose the case because the flighty aunt won't come back to testify.
Right.
And so they are impoverished. They are famous, publicly famous, because of this case that they've lost. And in some ways, I think the most disturbing little moment in this film is when they are going out to take a walk. And the men in the truck drive by and sort of stop and look at them. And I think there is this real sense of physical danger for them, about assault, about physical violence. And of course, Joe is this kind of protector for them, but that relationship does collapse. And eventually the lie collapses as well.
Right.
That it is realized that no, in fact, they have not been lovers. But then we have the kicker in that Shirley MacLaine, in effect, will say, well, yes, I'm in love with you, and
I've had these feelings.
And they didn't come to light until the accusation happened.
Right.
And so it is, of course, fascinating to think, well, the mechanics of that, right, in terms of this little girl who, well, okay, do we think that Mary, who again is total bad seed,
right,
the evil child, right, unapologetically evil child, do we think, again, that she is halfway honest in believing that they are lovers?
There's reason for her to be halfway honest. And however, she's so evil and she's so conniving and she's so untrustworthy that even if there is intimacy or, some sort of romantic relationship between them or an emotional relationship between them, you just don't want to give this girl any credit.
I agree.
And it's unfortunate that it takes the quote lie to bring out the truth.
The truth.
And but sadly, the truth leads to Shirley MacLaine
committing suicide.
Because, we can think about why. Because she wants Audrey Hepburn to live her life happily. She wants her to go back to Joe. Or she just can't bear the thought that she's attracted to women. That's left kind of a question mark.
It is, and it's, I think, a not very satisfying one either. Because it's not this... And one thing that is important is she clearly doesn't expect Karen to come back and say, oh, well, I love you too, and let's run off.
Right.
And she's not expecting that. She does seem distraught at this discovery of her own sexuality.
Yes.
But, of course, Karen's response is not necessarily a good one. In that Karen's response is initially... This isn't true. Why do you think that? You're upset.
So much has happened. You're tired.
You just think of these crazy things that aren't, a good night's sleep. Well, you'll get over it. And so we do have the classic, and of course, this is something that you teach and talk about much more than I do, but we do have this kind of classic moment at the end of the film where, quote unquote, the gay has to die, which is a trope.
Right.
But I don't think it's explained very well. Again, why is she committing suicide? Does she think that Karen will go back to Joe? Doesn't she realize that this will be a long-lasting, devastating event for Karen since they've been friends for so long? And in some ways, the ending seems kind of cheap to me, I will say.
However, in the time period, there is no other alternative.
I hear you.
And so that is why that happens. And again, an openly gay character, even as reluctantly open as she is, does have to kill herself in this in this framework, and also in terms of kind of Cold War milieu and all of that. And again, Hellman herself, had all kinds of sexual partners and, lived a very complicated life, and also a life also based on rumors and innuendos and all sorts of vibes that we see in this play and or in the play and then the movie. Very, very Hellman-esque. But it's very, very sad. And although at the very end of it, when we see Audrey Hepburn leaving
the
we
cemetery,
see Joe behind the tree, and we do not see them reunited.
No, absolutely not.
And that's very important.
I agree.
That whatever has been said between them is done.
Is done.
And that it doesn't matter now that Shirley MacLaine's not in the picture. And that also they're no longer in the papers for being lovers, and that their reputations are intact, that it's done.
You know, I it's interesting because I was thinking about, this is a weird connection to make, but so Henry James writes this novel, The Bostonians,
right,
about feminists, early feminists in Boston. And the ending of this book is very famous because the suffragette, the sort of blue stocking, who has had this very, very close relationship with the younger feminist Verena. Verena ends up marrying this very masculine man. And so you have the masculine man now married to the feminist Verena, who's sort of like, no, you need to stay away from her. And the older suffragette, quote unquote, blue stocking, she's miserable, something terrible is happening to her, and it's very much the sense of like, she has been excluded, she has been pushed out, and Verena, the young feminist, is now with this sort of solid, very aggressive masculine man. And in some ways you can imagine an ending of The Children's Hour that is a version of that, right? But with the older character, the Shirley MacLaine character in this case, again, sort of being excluded, being dead, and this resolution of Audrey Hepburn back with James Gardner, which again, as you say, this doesn't happen. And so it is a very different kind of ending than we have in something like The Bostonians, where it's, nope, she's just going to be on her own. She is not going back to the arms of the man. There's no affirmation of the Audrey Hepburn characters saying, I'm receding back into respectability, right? I'm going back to this heterosexual relationship. I mean, she is heterosexual. There's every indication that she'll go on to have a relationship with a man. But it's not this kind of, we've solved that problem and now I'm going back to this sort of basics.
Although, interestingly, going back to After the Hunt, the Maggie character resolves her life that way.
Oh, yeah.
In that she says, of course, you know, homosexuality or, you know, her marrying a woman doesn't matter anymore in 2025, especially in New Haven, right? But her happy ending is, I'm marrying a woman. I met this great woman who like works at MoMA or something, right? And I'm living my life, and it's I'm going on. And it's respectability. Yeah. She ends up that way, and of course Julia Roberts does too, in The Dean, and I guess a better relationship with her husband. But it's interesting that even the queer character in After the Hunt goes to respectability.
Yeah. And bourgeois respectability.
Yes.
And that's actually something we should also point out about The Children's Hour, because to me, one of the most interesting lines is when Karen and Martha are having that big conversation at the end, when Martha ends up saying, I do love you. They have this little moment where they say, well, okay, other women live in these relationships. They have sexual and romantic relationships.
Right.
So why is it in effect so bad, even if we were that way?
Right.
And the argument that they give, it's dependent upon place and to some extent upon class.
Right.
And commitment. Because the answer is, well, okay, they might be in Greenwich Village or whatever. But the answer is also, if they know their sexual identity, if they are confident in their sexual identity, then they just live their lives.
Right.
And that, but they of course say, but we're not quote unquote like that. And so we can't have that sense of validation and that we're living our truth or whatever. And I think it is important to understand that that is being said in 1961. I wonder about the original play and if there was a line like that in when the play first came out in the 30s. And of course, I have no idea. I haven't read the play. Yeah. But that's a very interesting line to me, because I think that's a natural response of someone seeing the film in 1961 to say, well, wait a minute. There are lesbians living in New York City or whatever, right? What's the problem?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so we have an accusation that ends up being true.
Right.
Even if it is not delivered in a sense of truth-telling.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And again, just to a point of comparison, an accusation that initially needs to be validated a few times.
Yes.
Unlike After the Hunt, where the accusation is it.
Yeah.
Is the
and it's barely an accusation in the sense of detail. Right. It's just, as we talked about earlier, it's just across a line. And we do have these different layers of details, right? The whispered thing to the grandmother and the conversation and the verifying. And because, of course, there is the sense that these relationships there's many different possibilities about the relationship between these two women.
Yes,
Who,
absolutely.
after all, are living together.
Yes.
Living together
Sure.
as the co-heads of this school.
Sure. Okay.
So let's, it does have a downer ending, I would say.
It does.
Well, let's repeat that. It does have a downer. Although, as you say, but Audrey Hepburn is very empowered, and we have that wonderful sort of marching out with her head held high. Okay. So let's talk about another film, in this case from 1956, that isn't quite about an accusation, although we do have sort of an accusatory vibe here. We definitely also have themes of sexuality, sexual identity, masculinity, femininity in a sense, and this is Tea and Sympathy. 1956, set at a boarding school.
Yep.
Much like the Children's Hour. And we have, again, dynamics, power differential between teachers and students, but we also have a weird sort of in-the-middle person of Laura, the main character.
The wife of a coach.
The wife of a coach, and we consistently wonder why she married him. We can talk about that in a minute.
Right.
And the close relationship that she has with one of the students at the school
who is
living in their dormitory, the dormitory that they live in. And so the student Tom is not very popular with his classmates because of his
quote difference. He is more, in their eyes, effeminate. He knows how to sew. He knows how to cook.
He wants to be a folk singer.
He wants to be a folk
Very
singer.
1956.
He is going to be in a play where he performing as a woman wearing a dress. He doesn't know how to, quote, walk the right way. And he is really tormented by the other guys throughout most of the film, and who not only accuse him of being gay, and they call him sister boy, and he's not man enough, but his own father is incredibly disappointed.
Awful.
His own father, who attended this school, who's close to this coach, continues to harp on why his son can't just man up and be like the other guys and have a crew cut,
Play sports,
and just,
and he doesn't play sport actually.
well, okay, so I just want to pick apart a few
tennis.
the tennis. Okay, so when I watched this, and I hadn't seen this film in a while, I had forgotten the tennis part. Here is the thing that is so funny, and this is, I guess, a dated thing about tennis. So he is this really good tennis player, Tom, and he's playing against another guy who they say swings like a man, which I assume to be a full swing and a follow through. And Tom has what looks like more like a slice. Okay, now if we were to see tennis today, and somebody like, I don't know, Djokovic or any of the main guys, Alvarez, right, they have slice all the time. There is nothing effeminate about a slice. Okay, and again, Federer is this incredible backhand slice that he's really famous for. So there's an interesting evolution of how that style of play has come to be sort of now gotten more masculinity attached to it, because watching the two of them play, I was like, yeah, that guy's got a slice. I mean, that's how he's winning, and slices are hard to return. I mean, there's no joke in that. But it's just interesting that, again, he is an athlete. He's a good athlete, and he's still somebody who is the, recipient of a lot of sort of bullying. And turmoil and things like that. And his own father, again, is the worst of them all.
Absolutely.
And again, even if his own father gave him a little bit of support, or said, son, it's okay, you can do lots of things, or the theater, people used to dress up as women all the time, Shakespeare. Whatever. He doesn't do that. He just continues to harp on him. And again, so there's this interesting relationship between Tom and Laura, who you also know is lonely, who feels like she's dealing with like major toxic masculinity and being married to, what's his name? Bill. And she had been married before to this other kinder, gentler man,
whom she had married when she was 18, and he was 18.
Who died in
World War II.
Okay, so she loved this other man very much, so much so that she still celebrates her anniversary.
That was very odd, but anyway.
Okay. And she tells Tom, you remind me of my first husband. And so the whole movie, for me at least, I mean, I don't think we would call it queer coded. I think it's
Tom
is
out and out.
Tom is a gay man.
Oh, see, I disagree with that though.
I took the whole movie as Tom is a gay man, and this movie is a way to shame him and to box him into a straight envelope and to give him a happy straight ending. And that he
I disagree. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
I read it as a cautionary tale to gay people.
I totally disagree.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, he's gay, and he doesn't want, like, the scene with the waitress where he's supposed to hook up with her and then tell everybody about it. He's not interested in her because she's a woman, and he's not.
He has sex with Laura in the film.
He has sex with Laura because he's trying to prove to himself that he's is not gay, but he's gay. Well, he's gay.
Here's the counter, and it goes back to what you just said about the tennis stroke. Because one of the things that I think does come up a lot in this film, and Tom himself even says it, things that do not need to be coded as effeminate, when he does them, they are read as effeminate.
Right.
And the tennis is a good example of that, where yes, he's an athlete and he should be praised by the other boys for doing this, but he says this to his roommate who is sympathetic for much of the film, where he says, I don't even think about how I walk. Right. And why is it that things, or the hair,
the walking
right? I mean, his hair,
scene.
it's so funny that his dad is so obsessed with his hair. And he says, look, a crew cut doesn't look good on me. He's like, I've tried it before. It just doesn't look good on me. I like this. I think this is more flattering. And so to me, I do actually think that all of those times when Laura says and tries to say to Bill, she says to Bill, you have one narrow vision of masculinity. Right. The whole point about Tom is that Tom is showing us a wider spectrum of masculinity. And here, you know what? I'm going to agree. There is a gay character in this film. It is Bill. Because the whole point is Bill is the guy who's like,
the repressed,
I'm super repressed. I'm super. So we are told.
I'm going mountain climbing.
I'm going mountain climbing with the boys. So we are told about Bill. Right. He does not want to have sex with his wife. Right. He does not want to touch her.
Okay.
He does not want to be affectionate.
And she's hot.
And we can talk about that in a second too.
I think she's hot.
I don't know. Deborah Carr has just never done it for me. I just think she's so like, I don't know.
Anyway. I think she's hot.
I think she's sexier than The King and I, actually. But anyway. but we do have, Bill is this classic kind of homosocial guy, right? But I think also when we get the added bit that he will not sleep with her, because she says this, right? She's like, we don't touch each other, you don't touch me. Why? And they've only been married for a friggin' year. And so to me, what I think is interesting, Bill is the totally closeted, hyper masculine. But the point of Tom is to say, you know what? A guy can sew. A straight heterosexual man, he can sew, he can have longer hair, he can be interested in the theater. Because of course we're also told that Tom does end up getting married. He doesn't run off again to basically live his truth with his partner.
To me, I think this is all Hollywood saying this guy is gay, and you might be right. Okay, I'm willing to go if Bill is gay too, but he encounters another gay man, which triggers his own repressed queer feelings. Okay, and I think that it's all a cover-up, that Tom's stuff is all a cover-up. There's no world in which Tom is again, going to the village and going to live with a partner and we never see him again. This is Hollywood, again, saying this is what can happen for you if you're gay, and kind of pray the gay way. And
I completely disagree.
And that's the way.
Because if that's the message of the film, or in general, I just absolutely don't think that we can say every representation of a man who, again, likes theater, likes to sew. I don't think we can say that means that he is super explicitly a closeted gay man.
But again, Hollywood,
he has sex with a woman in this film.
Right.
I'm just going to say that again. He has sex with a woman whose husband is not having sex with her.
Right.
Who's the gay one? The one who's having sex with her?
Right. But she later says in the letter, right?
Yes,
she later
says so annoying.
The letter is, to me, sort of the smoking bullet. Whereas, she really kind of talks about she shouldn't have done it, and she should have been thinking more about her husband than about Tom. And again, to me, it's the Hollywood message of he's gay, but he fixed it.
No, see, I think...
And you can too. That's the way that I read it. And I don't think that, again, Hollywood is clever enough at this time to say we're actually going to think about alternative visions of masculinity.
But that's where I think it's important. I mean, it comes from a novel, right? It comes from a novel. And I do think, yes, the letter at the end is ridiculous. But that, of course, is more a focus of rescuing Deborah Carr.
Sure.
Who is, of course, this massive star in 1950, as unappealing as I find her. You know, she's a huge star in 1956. Sure. And so I think it's more saying, well, wait a minute, we just endorsed adultery, that this woman isn't, and she does leave her husband. She leaves Bill.
Sure.
Right. So we don't have that restoration of, oh, okay, they're all happy now. But Bill, of course, has not gotten married again.
Right.
Bill's still living there with the boys in the household, going on the camping trips.
Right.
You know, so I think we might have some Brokeback Mountain going on with Bill and the camping trips.
I think we had an experiment gone. An experiment that then led to a lifelong of more experiments.
Okay,
and that Tom later in his life, as we go to see him, will be on the down low. I mean, there's just no question about it.
Okay, here's the thing. So I hate to say it, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but you are reading Tea and Sympathy as if it was written by Tennessee Williams. No, I mean, and think about it that way, right? So if we kind of cross Tea and Sympathy, you know, with something like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, right? Again, sort of the closeted young guy who sexually experiments with another man, and, you know, then it becomes hell for his wife or whatever. And so I think that, yes, you might be right that that Hollywood can't confront it. Nevertheless, I think that it is so interestingly explicit in the film. This is Laura's whole point, right? Again, that spectrum of masculinity, and that people do not need to be shoved into these narrow categories and told that, okay, this is the whole point of what she says, right? If a man has these interests, it doesn't mean he's gay. And yes, you might be saying that the film is arguing the opposite of what Laura is saying. But I think she is a genuine mouthpiece. And that just doesn't make sense to me, that the film is arguing against what we hear her say so often in this film, right? All of these different kinds of activities, interests, personae, clothes, whatever. That because can still be a straight man.
Yes, because she is a straight woman and she wants to sleep with him. She wants him to. It's a Will and Grace situation.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
but see, again, that's, I don't know. I'm going to maintain Bill is the gay man.
I don't disagree about Bill. I'm okay. I agree with you on Bill, but I'm saying
But again, it's 1956. Then why he just needs to like run off to the city and just
can't do it. Can't do it on
He's
film.
a novelist.
Can't do it on film. Can't do it on film.
Well, I don't mean I'm
just saying that celluloid closet. You know, watch it over and over. There's no happy ending for gay people.
Okay. And I understand that. I absolutely understand that. But I also think, and certainly you as a historian of 20th century popular culture, right? You think about this much more than I do. But I do think, right, in 1956, even that lesson, that there is a broad spectrum of masculinity that doesn't involve,
right,
again, or that does involve all of these other things, that to me is enough of a radical statement in that film. And, you know, what's interesting though, of course, you know, thinking about the other things that we talked about. So we have basically a high school junior, because it refers to him coming back the following year.
Right.
We have a high school junior who basically is like going out to have sex with a prostitute.
Right.
Who, and although it doesn't happen in a very disturbing kind of way, and then has sex with his headmaster's teacher or whatever. I'm sorry, wife. And this is all presented very much, of course, in a different way than it would be presented today.
Yeah.
So certainly today, the idea might be, oh, well, she's sexually harassing him. She's
Right.
very forward. I mean,
She is forward.
but he also is very forward with her. He kind of stalks her, in a sense, right? He's always kind of following her, wants to find out where she is. And this is the other thing, then, that you need to explain.
No, but this
You need to explain, why is he constantly...
Because he's a gay man who needs comfort with the one person who can understand him. When he is surrounded by people who are ostracizing him, who are bullying him.
So why kiss her in the first place?
Well, I think he's sexually confused. I mean, I think he's trying to figure... He is trying to pray it away or kiss it away or what. I think on the one... Again, he's confused. I'm not saying he's out and proud. I'm saying he's a gay man who's sexually confused.
Okay.
And that is the way I read it.
Okay.
And I will stick to that.
Okay. And I am going to respectfully disagree with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
And again, I think we are seeing this very interesting spectrum of masculinity.
Yes.
And this is what, and because of course, and we also always have the word gentle. Right? That this gentle.
Right.
And,
Right.
but I think that Deborah Carr is so unappealing sexually.
Okay.
And it's interesting that you think she's hot, because to me...
She's not as hot, as some of the other women we've talked about in some of these older films or that sort of thing. But I can see how in this film she's cast in the right way. I mean, she's not a total bombshell. And again, to be
it's not Marilyn Monroe in 1956.
No, and again, to be married to this coach at this boarding school, to have this like super super hot wife wouldn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yes. Well, and of course, the other dynamic that is pertinent is that we are told very explicitly that he has never really known his mother. His mother abandoned him, and she understands the relationship to some extent initially, in that she is kind of mothering him. Hence the whole tea and sympathy thing, right? She's told, this is what you're supposed to do for these boys. Right. Give them tea and sympathy, not then like have sex with them in a glade somewhere off the golf course. So it is interesting to think if tea and sympathy were being made today, right? And this is another film that would not be made today.
No.
The dynamics would be so unacceptable.
So unacceptable.
And I think we do need to probably point out, before we finish today, that tea and sympathy is the origin of something Dan Savage says very often as the paradigm, right, for relationships between older people and younger people. That the obligation of the younger person entering into such a relationship is the tea and sympathy rule. That be kind. This of course is the famous sort of last line, or one of the last lines of the film. When you speak about this in the future, and you will, be kind. And so again, this is the Dan Savage tea and sympathy rule, the obligation of the younger person in the relationship with the older. Not to then later on, criticize the older person, but...
And say they were
like
a hag or...
Yes, whatever.
Whatever.
To be kind. To be kind.
Right. Or to say, you know what, I just like men, and I don't know why I slept with that woman. And, which is what Tom will say.
Okay, you know what the one thing we can agree on?
Okay.
We can agree on this.
Yeah.
If nothing else, we can say that Tom Lee is not a gold star gay.
No!
He is not, because he does have sex with a woman. He's not a gold star gay.
No!
Just like Dan Savage, actually. Not a gold star gay. Not a gold star gay. Oh, wait, can I say one more thing about tea and sympathy?
You say whatever you want, girl. You say whatever you want.
I realized the entire time. So, yes, the dad is terrible. The dad is so terrible that he even dislikes the friends, right? That Tom has.
Awful.
So awful. But I was like, he looks so familiar. I'm like, that actor looks so familiar. Yes. Who is he? And so I looked it up. The actor who plays Tom's dad is Grandpa Baker in 16 Candles. The one who was like, where is my automobile?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So he always plays like assholes, apparently.
Oh,
The one who does the little claps his hands like really rudely.
It's interesting that we read that movie so differently.
It is.
But yeah, I'm gonna leave him with being again a Will and Grace situation. So
interesting.
Yeah,
I do like to mentally sort of recast that film. I think it would be fascinating if there were someone with more overt sex appeal than Deborah Carr. Because she does to me look so motherly. She's like motherly. 35 when she makes that film. Again, to me, she looks like she's 50.
She looks so old. She does.
I mean, it's part of that 50s haircut. That 50s haircut. Why do women get that in the 50s?
It's not short.
No,
you don't
it's
put
just
it
that
up.
helmety
Like,
thing.
what is it? Yeah, what is it?
And she's so stagey to me. You know, the whole like British accent thing where it just doesn't work. It's like, where did you come from?
I get
she's
it.
stilted. She's stagey. It's like she's still doing the play on Broadway. And I want someone in that role who does have more sort of electricity, more appeal.
But the problem with that is
kind of more milfy. I hate to say it, but I want more milfy.
No, but if you put a Stifler's mom in there, for instance, okay,
Yes.
going back to one of our other podcasts,
Yes.
if you put a milfy person in there, then the other guys are going to really want her too.
Fair point.
And the whole point of this movie, as I read it, and maybe obviously we're reading it differently, is that they have this special connection and that he sees things in her that other guys don't see.
Yeah,
whereas
that's
if
a good
she's
point.
a super, just off the charts, MILF bombshell, all the other guys are going to be drooling around. Plus, the whole husband not sleeping with her, then the gayness of that
is
will come
overt.
out. Overt.
Yes.
Overt.
Yes.
So you can sort of say, well, maybe she just isn't hot enough for him. I don't know. I do buy Bill being gay completely.
Yeah, I think that's.
But I think there are 2 gay men in this film, not one. And I'm sticking. I'm sticking to it.
We will just have to agree.
We will have to
agree to disagree.
We will.
So we have again. It's really interesting to think about. We don't have time to talk about it today in our episode, but it's interesting to think why universities, schools really generate these kind of dramatic connections.
Yeah.
The again power differential that we've mentioned a couple of times. The idea of that accusations are so powerful they can destroy lives.
With the older films, the living arrangements.
Yes, very much so.
That again, not so much with After the Hunt, although we can talk about the fact that the first scene with everyone being so intimate in that space led to the rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the first 2 films, the earlier films, Children's Hour and Tea and Sympathy, have people living in close quarters and observing one another in close quarters. And again, in one instance, Tom is living right above the couple, and in the other, the 2 women are living with the girls. So a lot of it has to do, I think, with sort of spatial orientation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And in workplace situations where people aren't spending all of their time together, it's not to say that of course it happens, right? But you don't have that 24-hour proximity to one another.
Well, but it's also interesting then. So of course we have very different age groups, right? We've talked about very young girls, sort of elementary school age girls, and then we have the teenage boys, and then of course we have the graduate students. And it seems to say something that our graduate students seem to be the most fragile of our 3 demographics.
And it's interesting.
And we could probably talk about that for another hour. But I think that's fair to say.
No, I agree with you. And it's interesting because, again, Mary, little bitch Mary, but she's tough as nails.
Absolutely.
And she's tough as nails.
She's a criminal. She's a little criminal.
In 1961. And Maggie, in 2025, really does seem like she is completely going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And again, different things are happening to them, but it is interesting, yes. And Tom, I mean, of course, he's very, very vulnerable, and he is showing, he's having all of these moments of, kind of, depression, anxiety, however you want to think about it. But at the end of the day, he kind of, I don't say man's up, but
he goes back to the reunion.
Right, he goes back to the reunion. And again, we see the graduate student really, really having this trouble and having trouble even inhabiting the same spaces with Andrew Garfield. And it isn't, again, until the whole 5 years later thing, which we don't really understand, right?
Makes no sense.
That she's gotten her act together.
Yes, and is much more mature and assured and...
But who knows why?
Who knows why? It's a mystery. Well, we didn't talk beforehand about book recommendations, but I'm guessing yours might be The Celluloid Closet.
Well, no, I'm going to give you the book that we read. So we read last week in my graduate class.
Okay.
For anyone who isn't in my graduate class listening to this, and I don't think anyone is, it is a wonderful book by historian Carrie Baker. called The Women's Movement Against Sexual Harassment. And it is a history of sexual harassment in the 70s and the 80s, much of it occurring in academic settings. And some really, really fascinating legal history, all sorts of analysis of power dynamics. And it is really I wouldn't say it's a pleasant read, but it is a fascinating read, and it really gets into the ways in which, again, power and labor and various workplaces are treating sexual harassment at different times, and the meaning of gender and all sorts of ideas. So I highly recommend it if people are interested in a longer, I would say longer, but history of sexual harassment since the term became legally debated and legally argued.
Oh, well, that sounds really fascinating. And I will then also slap up The Celluloid Closet on our list.
All right.
Again, which we've mentioned earlier in the pod. Really interesting and important sort of history of a very important component of Hollywood. So I think that is all the time that we have now, Lauren.
Okay. Well, if we don't see, or we're never going to see you. If we don't communicate before Thanksgiving, have a wonderful hunt.
Have a wonderful hunt.
And until then,
Until then.
Harpies out.
Ooh.